Hi, welcome back. Today we are revisiting the mini steering lock warning. This one with the red padlock symbol and steering wheel, which previously in the other video we reset via a OBD2 software cable and the appropriate BMW software and reset the indicator. But after about a couple of months the indicator came back on again. Obviously it still thinks the actual steering lock is moving a little bit too slowly when the steering lock electrical plunger works. So today we are going to strip down the steering column, lubricate the steering lock and motor, thereby hopefully speeding it up, and hopefully then it won't trigger the steering lock warning. So this should be a zero cost procedure. And first things, release the adjustable steering column lever. That's to release, that's the lock. Pull the steering wheel out as far as possible and down to give you a bit more clearance. We have then got to remove the top cover to the steering column, and the way to do that is there's two little clips, one of which I've removed, you might be able to see, but there's a clip here, and so you have to get a screwdriver down in that slot, pull it up like that. See, there's the shape of the clip. You have to do the same at the back end. I've already removed the back end one and flipped it to the outside, just about it there. And then we'll do the same to show you how to do that on the other side. So this one the front end I've already done. The back end, you'll be able to tell where the clip is, because if you slide your screwdriver, flat blade screwdriver along, you'll see where it's tight, and you just got to wiggle in that screwdriver to that position where it's really tight. Difficult doing it left-handed, so I'm just going to swap over. And there we go. That's the other one out. Try and pull the cover out like so. That's the cover off. You see here on the corners are the clips. See how they work. You might see on the bottom cover. Basically, they go into these little bits here. So what have we got to remove now? Well, there's little torque screws here. On the other side. And the other thing you've got to do, and I've partially started removing this already, is to remove the lower cover, dashboard cover. So the top half is held in just by these little push clips. So what you've got to do is be quite firm with it. Get your flat bladed screwdriver again just behind the dashboard cover, give it a good firm pull forwards. We'll then pull this clip out and this one. Underneath there are 3 T20 torque screws, which are in this sort of position here, over there and over there. So you need to undo those, and then that whole dash cover will remove. And then you can also see there's a torque screw, a T30, that needs to come off, and then this lower steering column cover should remove to allow us to access the steering column lock, motor and mechanism. And there we have the lower steering column cover removed with those screws as indicated. By the way, if you don't know what a T20 or 30 bit looks like, it's basically a hexagonal type screwdriver bit, which you'll need to slot in sort of screwdriver head like this. And this cable is connected to it, that's just pulls off. Just needs to maneuver the cover around the steering column release lever. So now we can see whether we can get to the actual steering column lock, motor and mechanism, which is probably this thing here. And that steering lock motor is held in by what are called shear bolts, these two things here, which will need drilling out from the center to release the whole steering lock mechanism. Remove the electrical connector, which is this here. A bit tight, might need a little bit of prising out by a screwdriver onto the plastic, or grabbing with a pair of pliers. But that's that. See? So let's get a drill of the right size and drill these shear bolts out. So this is what it looks like with at least one of the sides drilled out. This side bolt's been drilled off, that's noticeably looser. This side just needs a bit more drilling, it's a little bit off centre. And to drill them, I do quite like to use cobalt drills. I'll put some links in the video description for you to buy these, along with some torque screwdriver bits. So I started off with a small cobalt drill and then went for, I don't know, something like a 10mm one. So it just needs a bit more and then the whole thing should release. And with the bolts drilled out, finally the steering lock motor unit comes off. See the remnants of the bolts there. I'll try and grip those with some mold grips to unscrew them. It's probably also a good idea to put in your ignition key and make sure you hear the steering lock disengage, and then disconnect the electrical connector. Then it means it's in the unlock position. Might not matter too much, but it might matter. Obviously when it locks, this little arm comes up to lock the steering column. So you could either change one of these for a new one, or we could try and dismantle it, which we'll try and do now. So that, I guess, is the part number of the part, and it looks like it's got a flippin' awkward pentagon starred screw to undo now, with a pin up the centre. I haven't got that size, so I could either cut a slot in the head with my little mini Dremel circular saw thingy, or try and whack in a screwdriver and turn it that way, or we could drill it out. And it turns out whacking in a screwdriver was as good a method as any. I'll change that for a normal screw, I think, when I reassemble. So here is the insides, a little electric motor, gear mechanism, some electronics. So what we'll do now is lubricate everything up with maybe some oil and some grease, and see if that makes it last a little bit longer. If it doesn't, then I think what we'll do next is maybe change it for that emulator board that you can get on the internet, which just emulates the operation of this device without actually having it in situ. One little thing to be aware of: if you remove the circular motor from the main lock mechanism, is that there's a little anti-tamper proof thing, little plunger on a spring down here, and if you let the lever go all the way down, which I'm not going to do now because it was a bit of a pain to do, but if you do, then this hole here allows the plunger to plunge into it, and then it's stuck in a position where it won't work properly. You can, if that happens, you can just about get a screwdriver down there and push that plunger that way, while at the same time pulling on this lever to release it. So the motor is here. You can just about see down there a little cog of the motor which operates on this cog, and you can operate it manually by pushing this cog with your fingers, and this plunger here moves in and out, and you can take it all the way out by continuing to move that. Yep, here we go, and then that plunger comes out. This is where it was greased at the end. Grease is a little bit dry, not too bad. Anyhow, I'll put some molybdenum grease down there to see if that makes any difference. You can see the sensor for how quickly the motor moves. So there's a magnet on this piece of plastic here where my finger is. There's a little chip with 3 legs, you can see. Just about there, and that's a hall sensor. So as the magnet goes onto it and comes off it, then that measures whether the mechanism is working correctly or not. This part moves fairly freely. Put maybe a little drop of oil on the plastic. The other thing I might as well do while we're here is take this plastic cover off. So it's held on with these little clips, one there and one at the other side, and then the motor just comes straight out. That's the electrical connectors that push onto those plugs. So these sort of motors have 2 little tabs, one there and on the other side you can get a screwdriver in to bend out, and you have to be a little bit careful with the brushes, but it's all doable. So I might just clean up the center part or commutator part of the motor while I'm at it, and check if the brushes are okay. And with a little wiggle, then that's the end of the motor taken off. So you can see that the commutator part, which is right, and we'll see if we can focus, right in the middle of the motor there, is well, is not a nice shiny copper. It's a little bit blackened, which makes the resistance a little bit higher. These are the brushes here. Brushes aren't too bad, but what I'll do is just clean up that commutator, bit of tissue, bit of oil, maybe a tiny bit of sandpaper to make that a little bit better. And that's it with it cleaned up a little bit better. So next we just need to wiggle the end back on again. So this end only goes on one way, with this rectangular bit fitting in that slot, and make sure the motor goes the right way round. So try and wiggle the brushes in there over that slightly wider washer piece so that they go either side of the commutator, and the end of the axis of the motor needs to go in the bearing. So a little bit of wiggling required, probably need 2 hands for this, and then you just need to push it together, make sure it rotates smoothly. Back together again, and then we just need to push these tabs so that it holds the plastic end in place. And that's with the motor and the mechanism back in place. Just need to put the top cover on in a minute. So I put moly grease, this stuff here, on the plunger, which goes into the shaft here. Also put some around the outside of this shaft. Sprayed the little plastic bits here with silicone lubricant, which is for rubber and plastics. It all moves very nicely. Hope that's enough to make a difference. And now it's just a matter of reassembling. So as I say, check that the mechanism works nicely just by moving this gear backwards and forwards manually, one way or the other. I think you do it from the top or underneath here. See how easily the plunger moves in and out. You'll probably need to move this little shaft thing here to get the plunger in correctly. See, that just rotates left and right. So experiment with that. And then make sure it goes over the lever here. And what you can do is reassemble it just with this half of the metal in place. Plug it back into the steering column, turn the put the key in the ignition, in and out, just to see and check whether the motor works correctly, which we'll see in a minute. So that's it with it reassembled. Note the lever position, and move the motor around until it's in this position. You might need to swivel this arm out of the way. No doubt when you're fiddling around with it, this lever will probably drop down into its forward position, which is like an anti-tamper setting, and then you will need to get in with a screwdriver, push on this rod here, push it down like so, a little bit at a time, while pushing that way on the lever to get this spring loaded plunger out of the recess in the lever, and then you'll be able to move it back. So that is it assembled. We'll plug it in and test it. Okay, I'm not going to show you that because I plugged it in and tested it, and because it's not connected to the steering lock, this lever comes out too far, which means it goes forward and goes into the anti-tamper proof position where it's permanently locked in that state. So it has to be reassembled on the steering column in order to see it operating. You're welcome to try it if you want to, but it just means you have to pull that plunger out again to get it operating correctly. It has to be in that position, the unlocked state, see, no plunger sticking out underneath, in order to get it into an assemblable and operatable state. But just to see the motor working, you're welcome to plug it in and try that for yourself. Of course, to reassemble we have to remove the remnants of these bolts. Fortunately they unscrew just by getting hold of them with a pair of pliers. That one certainly starts to undo. Let's just check this one. That one just about turns as well. So I just need to find some bolts at the right size to replace those, or you could order some new shear bolts from BMW. No idea what they cost. Actually, the other one was a bit tight, so I had to get these mole grips on it, which you might want to do. So here in my toolbox I found a couple of bolts the right size, the right thread, some washers to cover over a bit of the drill marks and a bit of the mess from drilling out the old bolts. And now we just have to mount it up. So you engage the rear of the unit first to get your bolts in. Not a lot of clearance around these bolts. I was able to get one in cleanly with the socket just about in there. I think the second one's going to be difficult, so you might want to find bolts that are like have that hex hole in the middle. I'll see how you get on. Put some thread locking compound. So Loctite 243 on the thread of the bolts. So just do that first. There we go. That should be sufficient. And get it in place. Now you need to find washers that obviously just the right size. And there we go. Actually, I was able to get both bolts fully home. Helped just to put the socket in, give it a tap on the end with a hammer so that it centralizes the bolt. Just about fitted. So now we've got it assembled, we can test whether the ignition lock actually works correctly just by putting the key in and out. You can hear it operating. Unlocked, steering wheel moves okay, and key out, locked. Again, heard it, and this time the wheel is locked. So certainly still operating. And what we've got to do now is to do a reset of that steering lock warning via the OBD2 port and that software that I showed earlier in my other video. So have a look at the other video for doing the software reset. And we need to obviously reassemble some of the panels, well, all of the panels actually, in the order that we took them off. No point detailing that now, so that's about it. Hopefully it will now last. I shall try and let you know in a couple of months to see whether that warning light still stayed out. So I got my computer out with the OBD2 cable again, did the resetting of the error for the steering lock, and it's now fixed the error, and hopefully it'll now stay away. And just to show that for completeness, off, on, so after the reset there is no steering lock warning, no padlock symbol, no steering wheel in red. And just to start the car, just to make sure, I'll show you if everything works fine. There we go, just the normal service reminder. So good luck with yours if you have a go at that. Not hugely difficult, perhaps a little bit tricky. Need some cobalt drills, you need some torque screws, maybe a couple of bolts, but not beyond the realms of the average DIYer or guy that likes doing his mechanics. So if you have a go, good luck and thanks for watching.